All right. These chapters are all pretty similar, like I say. It gets anyway. All right, so we'll talk about the cybersecurity and OT. All right, a lot of topics, but they're pretty simple. So the OT systems oversee physical processes, and some big problems are the integration of legacy systems and how to take the OT protocols and integrate them with the IT protocols. So one fundamental principle is layered defenses, where you don't have just one barrier like a firewall and everything inside there is trusted. Instead, you have physical security limiting who can get into your equipment physically, into your rooms and such. Then you segment your network. You have access control based on who the people are, intrusion detection, endpoint protection on the end devices, and security monitoring. These are all many layers of defenses, so if one part fails, another layer of defense will hopefully save you. So you have also policy procedures, risk assessment and monitoring. You consider the risks, decide which ones are important, decide what mitigations you're going to use to limit them. I'm working on teams like this for companies now, and it really is quite a process. Maintain your inventory, model the threats, establish your risk tolerance levels. These are all more or less management activities, but they're really important at companies. When you get tired of just getting hacked and you want to be responsible, you have to control these things. So you've got all the technology. You've got firewalls, IDSs, your secure remote access solutions, your SIM systems, encryption, authentication, and secure development processes. All these are solutions that help limit the risk inside your company. You have incident response with testing and exercises to deal with security events. And you educate your employees about threats and social engineering, especially. More and more people are talking about social engineering attacks now. It is very common that you just trick people into making mistakes, as we know, and there are other aspects of awareness. So the core principles, risk management, as we've talked about, asset inventory and classification, making things that are secure by design. So you plan your systems to be secure before you design your processes to include security from the beginning. And then you have continuous monitoring and incident response. Continuous monitoring is a word that was used maybe 8 years ago to refer to monitoring for flaws in the system, like not necessarily particularly oriented toward security, but now it's also applied to security monitoring, or you're watching for incidents that suggest there's been a breach, and then incident response, of course, when you do detect a breach. So, physical security is things like cameras and surveillance and intrusion detection systems. Then network segmentation, divide your network into VLANs or other segments so a problem in one area cannot easily spread to another. Your IDS systems, your endpoint protections we know about, and your SIM systems like Splunk are there to help people detect problems by analyzing data from many sources, and your security awareness and training we've talked about. All right. And risk assessment and management. You got to identify your assets, consider the types of threats, which will include, of course, physical tampering and natural disasters, and then determine your vulnerability. Things like missing patches, weak points, bad security controls. Determine how likely it is that this bad thing will happen. Consider how much it would harm you if the bad thing happened. That's the impact. And then you can combine those to decide which risks are the highest priority, the most likely to happen that would actually cause the most harm. And those are the ones you prioritize mitigating with different procedures, patches, security controls, or so on. And you have to continuously monitor and review and update all these because the risks keep changing and the threats keep changing. So you have security assessments that measure your overall health and the possible attack vectors and weaknesses. All right, and the security assessment, you start with scoping and planning. This is, like I say, very standard CISSP stuff and CISM and CISA stuff. You plan, you decide what part of the company you're going to assess. Then you find out what systems and processes need evaluation. you set up your timelines and communication channels, you get permissions and approval, then you gather information from all these people, which is something a CISA often does, and you have to convince people to fill out reports, reporting on the status of their systems. And then you locate weaknesses with vulnerability scanning and pen testing, and then you compare your system to best standards or regulatory requirements to assess your levels of compliance and what changes are required to achieve compliance. And you consider your incident response and incident management capabilities. Missing a space there. An extra space. And you gauge your security maturity. Your incident response system goes through levels of maturity from having no essential ability to handle an incident to getting smooth at detecting and fixing incidents, the most important indicator being the time it takes you to detect and resolve an incident. And you have documentation reporting of all this so you can keep track of your progress, and so your team can refer to what they did in the past for previous incidents to help guide them how to handle incidents in the future. And of course, remediation and follow-up, you will have to have a closed loop where you measure the success and you consider how to make it better, and do that after each incident on a regular basis, so you are continuously improving. So regular security assessments, of course, check for all these things like regulatory adherence and risk mitigation. You check these things, and all these processes will get better if you have regular security assessments instead of ignoring security until there's a breach and then running around scared and then trying to ignore it again until the next breach. Getting more organized and planning for these things is a better procedure, a more mature procedure. I shouldn't be so simple as to say a better procedure. It depends on your business risk, but you will achieve a higher level of security maturity that way. So you have to report these things. You have to, when your incident response is first activated by someone declaring that whatever just happened really is a security incident, and then you record what the attackers do, and there's regulatory compliance. All these require records. Information sharing is a big problem. I have been told that in Europe, there is an organized government facility where everybody sends information about their attacks so the government can receive that data and tell people. Now, in the USA, we are beginning to have that from CISA. It has been held up for more than a decade by privacy considerations. People cannot send pay caps or other information or log files to anybody else because it includes confidential customer data, and there are not sufficient legal protections to make it safe. So it's an issue. But information sharing is gradually increasing. It would really be best if companies would share information with other companies so everybody knows, I just got attacked, here's how they got in, here's what they did, and then other companies can be informed of that and patch their stuff. And like I say, it's getting better. CISA is having useful information, more and more of it these days. And then you get early warning, and you're more likely to be able to handle the incidents and prevent them. So for sharing, you have to have your employees have to know how to share information. You have to have anonymity and confidentiality when people tell you about flaws in your company so they don't get fired. A good company I worked at, I saw people get fired, but they would never get fired for telling the boss about something that went wrong. They would get fired for not telling the boss about something that went wrong. If a client called and said there's a problem and he didn't already know about the problem, then he would get mad. I have to know what's really happening all the time. He never got mad at me when I went to tell him something awful had happened, which happened pretty often. All right. So you have to have some way to share this information, and there are products out there to help you, something called Cyware, and another one, MISP threat sharing. There are these platforms. I'm not sure who's using them. Nobody I'm working with is using them, I think, but there are plans to do this. All right, so it'd be nice if you are in information sharing programs and sending regular reporting and analytics. This would certainly be good. I think this is in its infancy, like software bill of materials and supply chain managers in its infancy. These are the new hot things. However, here are the current standards, the big ones that are used for OT technology. NERC is a big one for electric companies. So North American Electric Reliability Corporation Critical Infrastructure Protection, you really have to obey this one. In the United States, Canada, and Mexico, so you have critical access, security controls, instant monitoring, reporting and response, and compliance and auditing, and you have to get NERC certified in order to do this. I think I am NERC certified. I've certainly been through some training on it. Then you got the IEC standard. This is the international standard for industrial automation and control systems, which has the similar information, but it's just the international one. And then there's NIST, the U.S. government one, which would apply to the government devices. This is the U.S. government standard for any business not particularly tied to electric companies like NERC. And it's got the same sort of thing: security controls, network segmentation, instant response, patch management. They all basically tell you to do the same basic IT things, but these are just the formal procedures, a list of things you have to do to comply. And then you can say you meet this standard. All right, so let's take a look at the other Kahoot, which is this one. All right. I see a comment, ISACs, to some information sharing. I've heard of them. I forget what ISACs are. Oh, Information Sharing and Analysis Center. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. By sector. Good. Yeah, stuff is really important, but it has been slow to develop in the U.S. All right. All right, so which one of these includes vuln assessments? Yep, that's of course part of risk assessment and management. All right. All right, so what measure rates devices on how critical they are? That's asset inventory and the classification. All right. And which one is the international standard? Yeah, IEC, NERC is the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. NIST is the U.S. only, and IEC is the international one. All right. All right.